The space station floated in the darkness between three distant stars. It was called Helix 9, and it was the largest military training center in the known galaxy. For 300 years, warriors from dozens of alien species had come here to learn how to fight. They came as recruits and left as soldiers. Some never left at all. The station was massive. It stretched across 50 kilometers of empty space, with spinning rings that created artificial gravity and docking ports that could hold 1,000 ships. Every year, new cadets arrived from worlds scattered across the galaxy. They spoke different languages, breathed different air, and saw the universe through different eyes. But they all came for the same reason. They wanted to become the best. Lieutenant Park stood at the window of the transport ship and watched Helix 9 grow larger. Behind him, 19 other humans checked their equipment and prepared for arrival. They were Earth's first military cadets to join the Galactic Academy. It had taken humanity 50 years of diplomacy and negotiation to earn this chance. Now, finally, they were here. Was 32 years old. He had short black hair, tired eyes, and scars on his hands from years of combat training. Before this mission, he had served in 3 wars on Earth. He had watched friends die. He had killed enemies. He had learned that survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about refusing to quit. Sergeant walked up and stood beside him. She was 28, with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and a calm expression that never seemed to change. Had been a helicopter pilot before joining the Special Forces. She could fly anything with wings or rotors, and she could shoot a target from 2 kilometers away without missing. "Big station," she said quietly. Nodded. "Big opportunity. We cannot waste it." Behind them, Corporal Lee was telling jokes to the younger cadets, was the squad's unofficial comedian. He laughed easily, smiled constantly, and never seemed to take anything seriously, but had seen him fight. When the bullets started flying, became a different person entirely. Private sat alone in the corner, reading from a tablet. She was the youngest of the group at 23. Some people thought she was too young for this mission. Disagreed. Had graduated top of her class in every training program. She learned faster than anyone he had ever met. What she lacked in experience, she made up for in raw talent. The transport ship docked with a gentle bump. The airlock hissed open, and the humans stepped onto Helix 9 for the first time. The docking bay was enormous. Ships of every shape and size filled the space, and aliens moved between them like rivers of color and sound. Saw creatures with scales and creatures with fur. He saw beings that walked on 2 legs and beings that slithered on none. He saw eyes that glowed and mouths filled with teeth. And all of them were staring at the humans. Kept his face blank and walked forward. He knew what the aliens saw. They saw small, soft creatures with no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They saw beings from a planet they considered unremarkable. Earth was listed in the Galactic database as a Class 4 temperate world with moderate gravity and primitive dominant species. The aliens thought humans were weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. A massive figure pushed through the crowd and stopped in front of. The alien was nearly 3 meters tall, with scales like black glass and eyes that burned like yellow fire. His arms were thick with muscle, and his claws could cut through steel. This was Senior Instructor, a warrior who had trained soldiers for 40 years. Looked down at with obvious disgust. "These are the humans." His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "They are smaller than I expected." "Size is not everything," replied calmly. Laughed. It was not a friendly sound. "On my world, we eat creatures larger than you for breakfast. Your species has no natural weapons, no poison, no armor. Your planet has gravity so light that children could jump over your tallest buildings. Tell me, human, why should I waste my time training you?" The other aliens in the docking bay had stopped to watch. They wanted to see how the humans would react. They expected fear. They expected weakness. Looked up at without blinking. "Because we asked, And because when we finish your training, you will understand why that was a mistake." Silence fell over the docking bay. Eyes narrowed. For a long moment, no one moved. Then turned and walked away. "Follow me," he growled. "Your quarters are in Section 12. Training begins tomorrow. I suggest you rest. You will need it." The humans followed in a tight formation. As they walked, moved close to. "That was bold," she whispered. "It was honest," replied. "They think we are weak because we come from a gentle world. They do not understand what Earth really is." "And what is Earth?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "A world that has been trying to kill us for 200,000 years. Every disease, every predator, every natural disaster. We survived them all, not because we were born strong, but because we learned to become strong. These aliens were given their weapons by nature. We had to build ours from nothing." They reached their quarters and settled in for the night. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly made of. Lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, hundreds of alien cadets were laughing about the soft little humans from the weak little planet. Let them laugh, he thought. They would not be laughing for long. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of creatures that thought they were superior. But humanity had not survived Earth by being inferior. They had survived by being stubborn, clever, and absolutely unwilling to die. The Galactic Academy had never seen anything like them. It never would again. 3 days passed on Helix 9. 3 days of stares, whispers, and quiet insults. The human cadets kept to themselves, eating in the corner of the massive dining hall while aliens at other tables pointed and laughed. The made jokes about hunting humans for sport. The brisk clicked their mandibles in what passed for mockery. The aquatic bubbled with amusement whenever the humans walked by. Ignored all of it. He told his squad to stay calm, stay focused, and wait. Their chance would come. On the morning of the 4th day, it came. All 200 cadets were summoned to the central training hall. It was a vast circular room with walls made of dark metal and a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. In the center stood a raised platform where Senior Instructor waited with his arms crossed and his yellow eyes burning. "Today," announced, his voice echoing through the hall, "we begin the first elimination trial. Half of you will fail. Those who fail will be sent home in disgrace. Those who pass will continue training. It is that simple." The cadets shifted nervously. Even the confident looked uneasy. Pointed to a massive door on the far side of the hall. "Behind that door is the gravity crucible. It is a chamber that can simulate gravitational forces up to 15 times the galactic standard. You will enter in groups based on your species. You will experience gravity far beyond what your bodies were designed to handle. Your task is simple. Stand for 1 hour. Do not fall. Those who fall are eliminated." A murmur ran through the crowd. The gravity crucible was legendary. Many cadets had heard stories about it. Some had heard stories about cadets who died inside it. Began calling out assignments. The who came from a high-gravity world would face 8 times standard gravity. The Briss would handle 6 times. The beings of water and flowing tissue would face 5 times, and the humans from their supposedly gentle Earth would also face 5 times. Felt tense beside him. 5 times Earth gravity. That meant every kilogram of their body weight would feel like 5 kilograms. Standing would be like carrying 4 copies of themselves on their backs. Breathing would be like trying to inhale with stones on their chests. It was going to hurt. "Any questions?" asked with a cruel smile. No one spoke. The trials began. The went first, marching into the chamber with pride and arrogance. Through the observation windows, the other cadets watched them struggle. Even the mighty, born on a world of crushing gravity, had trouble at 8 times standard. They sweated and trembled. Some fell to their knees, but most survived. The Briss went next. They were strong for their size, with exoskeletons that supported their bodies like natural armor. At 6 times gravity they managed. Barely. Several collapsed, their shells cracking under the pressure, and were dragged out by medical drones. Then it was time for the humans. They were beautiful creatures. Their bodies were like living water, held together by thin membranes that shimmered in the light. On there, they flowed through vast oceans without ever touching the ground. Gravity was their natural enemy. Led his squad into the chamber alongside 12. The room was empty except for smooth metal walls and a floor marked with grid lines. There was nothing to hold onto, nothing to lean against, just empty space and the promise of crushing weight. The door sealed behind them. A voice announced the countdown. Gravity increase in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. Planted his feet and bent his knees slightly. Beside him did the same. Behind them was actually smiling. 3, 2, 1. The gravity hit them like a hammer. Felt his body suddenly become 5 times heavier. His knees buckled. His spine compressed. Every organ in his chest seemed to drop toward his feet. Breathing became a battle. Each inhale required focus and strength. Each exhale was a relief that lasted only a second. Around him, they collapsed immediately. Their fluid bodies could not handle the pressure. They splashed against the floor like water balloons hitting concrete. Within 2 minutes, all 12 were unconscious. Medical drones rushed in through side doors and carried them away. The humans remained standing. Minutes passed. 10, 20, 30. Legs burned with agony. His heart pounded against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Sweat poured down his face and dripped onto the floor. Beside him was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she did not fall. Had stopped smiling, his jaw clenched so tight that could hear his teeth grinding. In the observation room, watched the monitors with growing confusion. The humans should have collapsed by now. Their planet had only one standard gravity. Their bodies were not designed for this kind of stress. And yet they stood, trembling, bleeding from their noses, turning red and purple from the strain, but standing. At 45 minutes, made a decision. He dropped to the floor, leaned forward, expecting to see the human collapse into unconsciousness. Instead, he watched place his hands flat against the ground, extend his legs behind him, and push his body up. Then down. Then up again. Was doing push-ups. In 5 times Earth gravity. One by one, the other humans joined him, dropped down beside and began pushing. Followed then the others. Within a minute, all 20 humans were on the floor, doing push-ups in perfect unison. Their counting echoed through the chamber. 21, 22, 23. Stared at the screen. His claws dug into the console. His assistant, a brisk named, made a sound of pure confusion. Instructor clicked, "What are they doing?" Did not answer. He could not answer. Because for the first time in 40 years of training soldiers, he had absolutely no idea what he was witnessing. The humans kept counting. 34, 35, 36. And senior instructor of the Galactic Military Academy felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Slammed his claws against the console and stood up so fast that his chair flew backward and crashed into the wall. The observation room fell silent. Every technician, every assistant, every officer present turned to look at the senior instructor with wide eyes and held breath. "This is impossible," growled. "The equipment must be broken. Run a diagnostic immediately." Scrambled to obey, her multiple legs clicking against the floor as she rushed to the control panel. Her mandibles clicked rapidly as she checked every system, every sensor, every measurement device in the gravity crucible. "The equipment is functioning normally, Instructor," she reported, her voice trembling. "Gravity is stable at 5 times standard. The readings are accurate." On the screen, the humans continued their push-ups. 47, 48, 49. Their movements had slowed. Their arms shook with every repetition, but they did not stop. Walked to the window and pressed his face against the glass. He had trained warriors who could bend steel with their bare hands. He had trained brisk soldiers who could survive in the vacuum of space. He had trained who could reshape their bodies into any form they chose. But he had never, in all his years, seen anything like this. "Increase the gravity," he ordered. Froze Instructor. "You heard me. Increase it to 6 times standard." "But sir, the trial parameters specify 5 times for their species classification. Changing it now would violate the rules of." Spun around and fixed with a glare that could melt stone. "I am the senior instructor. I make the rules. Increase the gravity, now." Mandibles clicked nervously, but she obeyed. Her appendages danced across the control panel, and the numbers on the screen began to climb. In the chamber, the humans felt the change immediately. The weight on their backs suddenly increased by 20%. Arms buckled, and for a moment his chest touched the floor. He heard cry out in pain somewhere behind him. He heard grunt like he had been punched in the stomach. But he pushed himself back up, and he kept going. 61, they counted together, their voices strained and broken. 62, 63. Scales had turned pale. He had seen warriors break under this kind of pressure. He had seen soldiers with bodies made for combat collapse and weep. These creatures came from a world with gravity so weak that they should have been crushed into paste. Instead, they were exercising. 7 times, whispered, increased to 7. Hesitated. Instructor, at 7 times standard gravity, there is a serious risk of permanent injury. The humans could suffer heart failure. Their bones could crack. If any of them die, the Earth government will. Do it. The gravity increased again. In the chamber, felt like a mountain had been dropped on his back. His vision went dark at the edges. He could hear his own heartbeat, struggling and stuttering, fighting to pump blood that now weighed 7 times what it should. His arms felt like they were filled with lead. His spine screamed in agony. He kept pushing. Blood began to leak from his nose. It dripped onto the floor in thick red drops pooling beneath his face. He could taste copper on his lips. Somewhere to his left, one of the younger cadets, a private named, had stopped moving. Medical drones rushed to pull him out. 19 humans remained. 77, they gasped. 78. In the observation room, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread through the station that something incredible was happening in the gravity crucible. Cadets and officers from every species pressed against the windows and screens, watching in stunned silence as the humans refused to die. Could not look away. His mind raced, trying to understand what he was seeing. These creatures had no evolutionary advantage, no genetic modification, no cybernetic enhancement. They were just flesh and blood and bone, the same basic materials that made up 100 other species across the galaxy. But something was different about them, something he could not name. "Why," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, "why are you doing push-ups?" He did not expect an answer. The humans could not hear him through the walls of the chamber, but somehow, impossibly, lifted his head and looked directly at the observation window. His eyes were bloodshot, the white part stained completely red from burst blood vessels. His face was purple from strain. Blood ran from his nose and ears. He looked like a corpse that had forgotten how to die. And he smiled. 99, the humans counted. 100. Collapsed onto the floor, his body finally giving out. Around him, the other humans fell one by one, their muscles completely exhausted, their bodies pushed far beyond any reasonable limit. They lay in pools of their own sweat and blood, barely breathing, but alive. All 19 of them, alive. The hour ended. The gravity returned to normal. The humans lay motionless on the floor, their chests rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. In the observation room, no one spoke. The silence was so complete that could hear his own heart's beating. Two hearts, designed by evolution for the crushing gravity of his. Hearts that had never known fear until this moment. Finally broke the silence. Instructor, what are they? Stared at the humans on the floor. Broken, bleeding, unconscious. They should be dead. By every law of biology and physics, they should be dead. But they were not. I do not know, admitted. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. But I intend to find out. He walked toward the chamber door. Behind him, the crowd of aliens parted to let him pass. They looked at him with confusion, waiting for him to explain what they had just witnessed. He had no explanation. He only had a question. A question he was going to ask the humans directly, as soon as they woke up. Why? Woke up in a white room that smelled like medicine and metal. His entire body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Every muscle ached. Every joint throbbed. When he tried to sit up, pain shot through his spine like lightning, and he fell back onto the bed with a groan. Easy, a familiar voice said. You almost died in there. Turned his head and saw sitting in a chair beside his bed. She looked terrible. Her eyes were still red from burst blood vessels, and dark bruises covered her arms and neck. But she was smiling. Almost does not count, replied, his voice rough and dry. Laughed, then winced and grabbed her ribs. Do not make me laugh, everything hurts. The medical bay was filled with human cadets recovering from the gravity crucible. Was 2 beds down, flirting with one of the medical drones despite the fact that it was just a machine. Was asleep, her face peaceful despite the purple bruises on her cheeks. All 19 survivors were accounted for. The one who had collapsed during the trial was in stable condition in a separate room. The door slid open, and Senior Instructor walked in. The room fell silent. The humans who were awake turned to look at the massive with expressions of caution. Had raised the gravity beyond the test parameters. He had tried to break them. Some of them thought he might be coming to finish the job. But did not look angry. He looked confused, almost lost. He walked slowly to his bed and stood there for a long moment, staring down at the human with his yellow eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I have trained soldiers for 40 years, said. I have seen bravery and cowardice in equal measure. I have watched warriors face death and triumph. I have watched them face death and fail. But I have never in all my years seen what you did today. Said nothing, he waited. I increased the gravity beyond what your species should be able to tolerate, continued. I expected you to fall. I expected you to beg for mercy. Instead, you exercised. You turned a torture chamber into a training ground. Why? Pushed himself up into a sitting position, ignoring the pain that screamed through his body. He looked up at and met his gaze without flinching. Because that is what gravity is for, he said simply. Scales rippled with confusion. Explain. Answered from her chair. On Earth, we do not have natural weapons. Look at us, Instructor. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. Compared to the predators we evolved alongside, we are soft and weak and slow, so we had to become something else. Sat up in his bed, joining the conversation. We learned to fight the only enemy that never stops attacking us, gravity. Every day of our lives, from the moment we are born, gravity tries to pull us down. It wants us on the ground. It wants us weak, so we push back. Had woken up and was listening quietly. Now she spoke, her voice soft but steady. We run until our lungs burn and our legs fail. We lift heavy things until our muscles tear apart. Then we rest and our bodies rebuild themselves stronger than before. We call it training, exercise, working out. But really, it is just fighting gravity over and over again until gravity loses. Stood perfectly still, processing this information. On his world, they were born strong. Their bodies were designed by millions of years of evolution to handle crushing pressure. They did not need to train for strength. They simply had it. But these humans had no such advantage. They came from a world that gave them nothing. so they had learned to take everything. You deliberately damage yourselves, said slowly, so that your bodies will repair themselves and become stronger. Every day, confirmed. Every single day. We have gyms on Earth where people pay money to experience pain. We have sports where we push our bodies to the breaking point for entertainment. We have soldiers who train in artificial high-gravity chambers because normal gravity is not challenging enough. Remembered something from the human files he had read, a small notation that he had dismissed as unimportant. Your planet has a term, weightlifting. Yes. You lift heavy objects repeatedly for no purpose other than to make yourself stronger. Yes. And you consider this normal. Smiled, and there was something almost frightening in his eyes. Instructor on Earth, there are humans who run 100 kilometers through deserts in temperatures that would kill most species. There are humans who climb the highest mountains on our planet, where the air is so thin that brain cells die with every breath. There are humans who swim through frozen water until their hearts nearly stop, just to prove they can. He leaned forward, ignoring the pain, and held gaze. You called Earth a moderate gravity world. You were wrong. Earth is a prison, a torture chamber, a planet that has been trying to kill us for 200,000 years through disease, predators, starvation, natural disasters, and yes, gravity. And every single human alive today is descended from the ones who survived. We are not strong because we were born on an easy world. We are strong because we were born on a hard one and we refuse to die. Said nothing for a long time. The medical bay was completely silent. Every human watched waiting for his response. Finally straightened up. His expression had changed. The confusion was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. I understand now, he said quietly. You are not warriors despite your weakness. You are warriors because of it. Your weakness forced you to become something that strength alone could never create. He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. Rest well, humans. Tomorrow, your real training begins, and I suspect you will teach us far more than we will teach you. The door closed behind him. Let out a long breath. Well, that was intense. Laughed, then grabbed her ribs again. I told you not to make me laugh. Lay back down and stared at the ceiling. His body was broken and exhausted, but his spirit was burning brighter than ever. They had come to this station as curiosities, weak creatures from an unremarkable world. Now the galaxy was beginning to understand what humanity really was. And they were only getting started. Word spread through Helix 9 like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the gravity crucible incident, every cadet on the station knew what the humans had done. Within days, the story had traveled to other stations, other planets, other systems. The soft creatures from Earth had turned a torture chamber into a gym. They had done push-ups under crushing gravity while bleeding from their eyes. The aliens did not know how to react. Some refused to believe it. They said the recordings must be fake, the sensors must be broken, the whole thing must be some kind of trick. Humans were from a weak world. They had no natural weapons. The story could not possibly be true. But others believed, and they were curious. 1 week after the trial, walked into the main training hall and found 50 alien cadets waiting for him. Briss and species he did not recognize all stood in a nervous cluster, watching him approach. A young stepped forward. He was smaller than, probably still an adolescent by their species standards. His scales were lighter, closer to gray than black. Human, the young said, his voice uncertain. We wish to observe your training. We want to understand how you become strong. Looked at the crowd of aliens. A month ago, they had laughed at him. They had called his species weak and primitive. Now they stood before him like students waiting for a teacher. You want to learn how humans train? Asked. The young nodded. Yes, we want to learn the ways of Earth. Smiled, then follow me. He led them to a smaller training room that the humans had claimed for themselves. The other 19 human cadets were already inside, in the middle of their morning workout, was doing pull-ups from a metal bar, was running on a machine that simulated uphill climbing, was lifting a heavy bar loaded with metal weights. The alien stopped at the doorway and stared. "What are they doing?" Abriss asked, her mandibles clicking with confusion. "They are exercising," explained, "breaking their bodies down so that they will rebuild stronger. This is how humans train, every day, without exception." He walked to an open space on the floor and dropped into a position the aliens had never seen before. His hands flat on the ground, his body straight, his toes touching the floor. "This is called a push-up," said. "It trains the muscles in our arms, chest, and core. Watch." He lowered his body until his chest nearly touched the ground, then pushed himself back up. Down and up, down and up. The aliens watched in fascination. "The gravity here is standard," the young said. "This seems easy." Smiled, "Then join me." The young walked onto the training floor in position. He lowered himself down and pushed back up. His arms trembled slightly. "I feel nothing," the said proudly. "That is because you did one," replied. "Now do 50. 15 minutes later, the young collapsed onto the floor, his arms shaking uncontrollably. His scales had turned pale with exhaustion. He could not believe it. He was born strong, and this simple exercise had defeated him. "How many can you do?" he gasped, looking up at. "Thought about it. My personal record is 300. But I know humans who can do over 1,000. The training room fell silent. The aliens looked at each other with wide eyes. 1,000 push-ups. The number seemed impossible. Over the following weeks, the human training sessions became the most popular events on Helix 9. Aliens from every species came to watch and participate. They learned exercises they had never imagined, running for hours without stopping, lifting heavy objects repeatedly, climbing ropes, jumping over obstacles, swimming until their bodies gave out. Most of them failed quickly. Their species had evolved on worlds that gave them natural advantages. They had never needed to train like this. The idea of deliberately exhausting yourself, deliberately causing pain, was alien to them in the truest sense. But some of them adapted. Some of them learned that the human way was not about being born strong. It was about becoming strong, and that was a lesson that anyone could learn. Watched it all from his office, reviewing reports and footage. He had been an instructor for 40 years. He had thought he understood everything about combat and training and war. Now he realized he had understood nothing. He opened the human species file on his console and deleted the old classification. In its place, he typed 3 words that would change galactic military thinking forever. Extreme persistence predator. He added a note below the classification. Do not underestimate. Do not provoke. These beings are not strong despite their environment. They are strong because of it. They have turned weakness into a forge and suffering into steel. Recommend maximum caution in all future engagements. 6 months later, the human cadets graduated from the Galactic Military Academy. All 20 of them, including who had recovered fully from his collapse in the gravity crucible. A 100% completion rate, the highest in Academy history. Stood before them at the graduation ceremony, looking out at the small group of humans who had changed everything he thought he knew. When you arrived, said, I believed you were weak. I believed your species was soft, fragile, insignificant. I was wrong. You have taught me something that 4 decades of training warriors could not. Strength is not what you are born with. Strength is what you choose to become. And you humans choose to become strong every single day of your lives. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with respect. I have trained warriors from 40 species. I have never been more impressed than I am today, and I have never been more grateful that you chose to be our allies. The galaxy does not know what it has gained in humanity. but I do, and I will spend the rest of my career making sure others understand as well. Stepped forward and saluted the instructor. Thank you, senior instructor, for pushing us, for doubting us, for making us prove what we are. Nodded slowly. What you are is remarkable, never forget that. The humans boarded their transport ship and departed for their first deployment. Stood at the window, watching Helix 9 shrink into the distance. Stood beside him, as always. Do you think they really understand now? She asked. Considered the question. Somewhere out there, enemies of humanity were preparing for war. They had read the files. They knew humans were small and soft and came from a moderate world. They thought they knew what they were facing. They had no idea. No, said finally. Not yet, but they will. Every enemy we face, every battle we fight, every impossible situation we survive. They will learn one lesson at a time what humans really are. He turned away from the window and walked toward the briefing room where his squad waited. Behind him, the stars burned on. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of creatures who thought they were the strongest, the fastest, the best. They were about to meet humanity. And humanity did not lose.